So I'm live and waiting for my sister. She's having some internet issues. Go figure. Trying to get to a location where we can possibly have this conversation. So I'm just for her to show up on to get to Swerve because all of a sudden the internet started acting up. And so I'm just waiting for her to find a location so that we are able to have our discussion tonight. But if you're joining me, welcome to this edition of Swerve with me. This is a show where each week we have conversations with people who have overcome their challenges and they're not afraid to show their scars and to speak their truth. Or if you're watching the replay, as so many of you do each week, welcome and thank you so much for swerving with me. Each week we get to talk to amazing people who come not just to promote or to flaunt their stories, but rather to say something that will help to encourage someone as they go along the way. So, as you come in tonight, I want you to do what we always do, that is to share and let somebody else know that we are back on live and awaiting the conversation. So, those of you who know the virtue of prayer, like they say in the church, pray, because my sister is having challenges with her internet and I'm hoping that she finds a way to connect so that we can have this conversation. I wanted to have a conversation with her this week based on something that she posted on Facebook, which gave me a signal that she was ready to, in essence, share her story. Because, when you're doing things like I do, um, and you talk to your family along the way, you're not sure whether people are listening to you, taking you seriously, or they're thinking that, oh, that's just her talking again. That's just Miranda again. And it was the result of her posting something that I had said to her many years ago that gave me, it was like a major boost, encouragement that, oh, wow, somebody's actually listening. And it's not just clients, it's not just strangers, but it's somebody who's connected with me. So my guest tonight is my sister, blood sister, my mother's daughter, Patrice Edwards. She is having challenges, so I'm waiting for her to get connected. But it's important that as I started this journey of self-awareness and self-discovery for myself, I wanted to make sure that the people that I loved and were connected to me were doing the same kinds of things in their lives. In essence, owning your mistakes, owning where you are in your life, and making a decision that you can do better. And so you just do better. You make the necessary changes to get yourself out of whatever rut, whatever circumstance you may be in, because nobody else is responsible for doing that for you but you. And I wanted to make sure that as I started my journey and continue my journey each week as I do the show, I wanted to make sure that those people that I care about are at a place in their lives where they're able to confront themselves. Because there's nothing like confronting yourself and owning the fact that wherever I am, nobody didn't do it to me. I made a decision and I am now reaping or dealing with the consequences of whatever decision it is that I made, whether it be a good decision or a bad decision. The fact is that you are the person responsible for your own dream, for your own vision. And I pray tonight that those of you who are out there listening as we wait for my sister, that your dreams will become bigger than your fears. Because there are a lot of people who have things that they want to do, but they're not quite sure how to get started. And then they're just fearful that if they started, nobody would support them. And that's major, because everybody wants to feel supported. Everybody wants to feel loved. Everybody wants to know that there's somebody who has their back. But the reality is, if it is a God-given plan, dream, vision, whatever you want to call it, there are a group of people that's out there waiting for you. They're waiting with whatever it is that you have to contribute to the world. And so while it may not necessarily be your immediate family, because you may not be called to your immediate family. And so that's okay. And even if you think that your family wouldn't support you, don't think about it as rejection. But how about they're not the people that you're called to serve? And so because they're not the people that you're called to serve, there's no need for you to feel rejected. Your job, your responsibility, your mandate is to go out there and find those people who, in fact, you are called to serve. And that's very important. So I'm waiting for those of you who are just joining me. Good night. Good night, Auntie Liz. Good night, Apostle Diana. Good to have you on tonight. You have to understand that nobody else is responsible for what you do. Nobody else is responsible for that dream but you. Now, you need people, if you're a visionary, you need people to help you to run with it, but it's not their responsibility. And whenever somebody comes along that wants to help you run with your vision, that is a blessing. You have to know that that is God and just give him thanks for whoever it is out there who's decided to partner with you or who's decided to believe in you because they understand that what you're doing, they want to be a part of. And sometimes those people that support you may have a similar vision. And so them supporting you and partnering with you is really them helping themselves because they get to have an inside look at what you're doing and not only what you're doing, but they're getting to learn so that they don't have to make some of the mistakes that you would be making along the way. So, yeah, you are responsible for your own dream. That is absolutely right. So, I'm sitting here waiting for my sister to connect. She's been having challenges with her internet, so I'm waiting for her to find somewhere because I wanted to have a conversation with someone who was prepared to be candid about their lives, about the decisions that they made and the results of those decisions that they have made. And so I kind of knew from the onset that the enemy would obviously challenge us getting together and talking and sharing. So I'm hoping that she finds somewhere real soon. But let's continue to talk about dreams and aspirations because this week in particular, I took some time. I've been thinking a lot about what we often think we need. Many times is not what we need. What we think we need and then who we think we need to support us and whatever our dreams may be, that's not necessarily the person that we may need for that particular assignment. But what happens is we get so caught up in our circle, in our own view of the way we believe things should be, and the people who should be there. And you're thinking, because I supported him, because I supported her, then they should be doing the same things for you. When the reality is, if they don't show up, that's because you don't need them. And that's okay. Because there's another group of people, there are a group of destiny helpers that are there to support you and to help you to achieve whatever goals that you've set for yourself or the vision that God has placed in your heart for you. So stop thinking about who didn't come, who didn't support, and begin to thank God for the people that do, for the person that did come, for the person that did support. If you change your perspective on a lot of things, we could really, really save ourselves a whole lot of grief. We could save ourselves a whole lot of tears. We could save ourselves a whole lot of conflict and confusion when it comes to what it is that we are assigned to do. Another thing that's important as you are on this journey of self discovery and owning what you are, what you've done, the things that have happened in your life. You have to own that and not hold somebody else responsible for it. Another thing that's important is that you set yourself in a place that no matter what, I have to. It is a must. It is a mandate that I must continue to press on. Yes, I may be disappointed and yes, I may be discouraged at times. But you can't live in a place of disappointment. You can't live in a place of discouragement. You have to find the power in yourself. You lies that power. In all of us lies that power to be able to get up and get moving again. So, in order for somebody else to believe that you're able to do it, you have to believe yourself first. You have to speak to yourself, especially on those days, and all of us have those days where we just feel down, where we feel discouraged, where we just feel like, hey, I don't know. This is not working out for me, and I don't want to be bothered with anybody because nobody cares about me, and you get into those woe is me type of situations. But on those days when that happens, you have to remind yourself, that I can do this. Yes, I can do this. God has given me everything that I need inside of me. The scripture says He's given us everything that pertains to life and to godliness. So everything that we need is, in fact, inside of us. And because if it's inside of us, then we are well able and capable of carrying out whatever that assignment is, whatever that dream is, whatever that vision is. And what we don't have inside of us to do, that is where help comes in. That is where that destiny helper comes in. That is where that person who is assigned to encourage and to push you comes into being. But you have to live your life in such a way that people feel comfortable with approaching you. You have to live your life in that kind of way where people feel comfortable in approaching you, because what happens is sometimes we don't position ourselves where we're open to receive, whether it's critique or whether it's praise from other people. Some of us don't know how to accept compliments, and some of us don't know how to accept critiques on the other hand as well. But you have to live your life in such a way where you open yourself to be able to receive both, because it's through both that you grow. And so sometimes people may think you are unapproachable because of the way you carry yourself, or because you are, apostle this or prophet that or pastor, whatever your titles may be, whether you're doctor or reverend or you have your masters. Some of those things are shields and they're repellents, and they stop people from being able to approach you in a way that they may want to contribute to your life. And so think about that for a minute. Think about what you're doing. Think about how you are positioning yourself for somebody else to come in and to be able to help you. Because I know you're praying. God, send somebody to help me, send my destiny helper, whatever you call it. Lord, send the funding, send whatever it is that I need to cause this vision to come to pass. But if you are on the same token praying that way but not open to receive it or not recognize it when it comes your way, then you are hurting yourself. You are responsible for that, nobody else. So you can't blame somebody if they are not lending you that hand, if they're not presenting the help that they may need, you may need in order to execute your vision. Good night, Keisha. It's good to see you too. I'm sitting here waiting for my sister, Patrice. That's what it is. I'm sitting here waiting for her to connect so that we can have this conversation about life, about what's happened with her, about the lessons that she's learned, and what she's doing now in her life to be able to move forward regardless of what has happened. And because a lot of times the things that have happened in our past tend to hold us hostage. We spend so much time thinking about, if we make this decision, what is this person going to think? What is my family going to say? How are people going to respond to me if I say this? if I come out with this. We spend too much time thinking about other people and not enough time thinking about is the way that I'm living my life in silence, in isolation, dishonestly, because you're not being honest with yourself. Is that pleasing to God? And so while we focus so much on externally what people think about us, how it will hurt our reputation, especially church people, you spend so much time thinking about what this sister or this brother is going to say and not enough time focusing on if I remain in this situation of dishonesty by not speaking my truth, by not expressing myself. You don't think about the pain that you're inflicting on God because the scripture says we overcome by our testimony, by what we say, and by the blood of the Lamb. And so when you remain in silence, when you don't speak when you should, when you don't encourage, when you don't share, ultimately you're displeasing God. And for me, that's priority. Being sure that I make him smile, that he is pleased. So you have to think about that wherever you are in your life. Is your reputation more important to you, or is what people say more important to you than what God thinks about you? Is your reputation more important to you than what God thinks? When we begin to shift the focus, when we swerve, and we begin to put God as the priority with whatever decision we make in our lives, it's going to help us. It's going to help us in ways that I don't even believe we can adequately express. Good night, Joba. Good to have you here. I'm still waiting for my sister wherever she is. But that's what's important. We sometimes allow pride to drive us to the extent that it silences us because we have this image, a false image that we created. It's a false image that we created because we want people to think of us in a certain way. And there's nothing wrong with wanting people to think of you as honorable, as anointed, as holy. But in the same token, they have to think of you as being human, subject to error, but saved by his grace and accepting of his brand new mercies every day. But when you put yourself on a pedestal and you portray this image of you being um, so upright and you being so just and so faithful and you could never do no wrong, when you put yourself on that own pedestal, you got to know that you will come tumbling down off that pedestal because you can't live up to that false reality. The reality is all have sinned, all have fallen short of the glory of God. And if it were not for Christ, if it were not for the sacrifice on the cross, if it were not for the shedding of the blood, the bruises, and all that stuff, we wouldn't be saved. We wouldn't even be alive to fake as if we have it all together, as if everything is just all right. And so when you think about that, when you put things in perspective and you become your authentic self, you're able to indicate, hi Nayoka, you begin to put things in perspective, and you could sit down and have conversations with people about the mistakes that you made, because the idea is that when you share, if they gain from what you say, then they don't have to make those same mistakes. They don't have to prove that they don't have to prove that they're flawless, because we all have flaws. And it's important for us to be able, listen, I don't mind if you are a pastor, an apostle, a minister. Don't be afraid to show your flaws. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Of course, you have to be wise and not cast your pearls before swine. But it's important that people see the real you. So what Job says, oh yes, we need to know that we all fall short of the glory of God. That's why we need him. Absolutely. That's why we need him. But see, when you're in a position of leadership, leaders have a tendency to fake it a lot because they want people to look up to them, but it's a false reality because while they have a responsibility to lead and to be strong, you also have a responsibility to be honest with people. You have a responsibility to let people know, ouch, this hurt. Because then you give people a three-dimensional view of what it is to lead, that you bleed, because some people lead and bleed while they're leading, but they try to cover it up. They try to put a bandage on it. And then when things finally come out and fall apart, it's really, really painful and devastating, not only for that particular leader, but for the people that follow them. So for the leaders out there, I'm still waiting, guys, for my sister. She hasn't called me, text me yet to say she arrived at a place where she can get in. Um, and so I don't know what's happening right now. So I'm just continuing to talk to you. I knew she had something to say, and I knew this would be a challenge. So most certainly, this is the enemy. Of course, most certainly, this is the enemy. Definitely, definitely trying to block and to stop what it is that she wanted to share tonight. Uh, Her story is interesting, by the way. She is my mother's sixth child. I come from a large family. My mother had 10 children, 10 children. So it's an interesting scenario. So my father had five children, but my mother 10. So here's how that goes. My parents were, but they separated shortly after I was born. So I was my father's last child. He never had any more kids. My parents separated. My mother later remarried, but she ended up having six children after me. So I'm a first girl. I'm a first girl, but my dad's last child. So that's an interesting scenario. So my sister tonight, Patrice, who I should be talking to, hey Monique, hey cuz, um, she need to find the internet somewhere. She is actually my mother's third daughter. She's the sixth child. She's the third daughter, and yeah, just it's kind of may sound a little bit confusing, but yeah, that's the story of our lives. And so I spend a lot of time, as much time as I can, actually talking with my siblings. We There were 10 of us, but one died. My sister Paula, back in I believe it was 2004. Um, yeah, so I try to spend a lot of time talking about things that as families sometimes we don't talk about stuff. We think things, we keep them like closed in because we're not sure if it's something that you should talk about because nobody before you has ever talked about it. So you're not sure if it's taboo, if it's safe, if it's okay to talk about it. But I try to spend a lot of time talking to them because I am their older sister. Um, to hear their heart, to hear what they have to say, to hear what they're thinking. And over the years, I've got to say, having six younger sisters for me, I was a major responsibility because while I didn't intentionally set out to try to be an example to them, like it wasn't intentional, I just tried to be me and do me. I was always aware that there were six people after me who were watching me, who were looking up to me. So I've always had that awareness. And we worked hard and continue to work hard at maintaining a good, solid, open relationship. We work hard at that. So I have these six younger sisters, but I have an older sister as well, who's my father's daughter. So I'm amazed by these seven women that are my siblings, and each one of them have amazing testimonies and stories within their own right. And to be able to watch them, the younger ones especially, grow and to mature and to become and come into their own has been extremely interesting and a wonderful privilege because, listen, when you get seven women in any place at any given time, that's a lot of talking. It's a lot of laughter. It's arguments at times, but I can tell you that we never walk away remaining upset with each other. Or we're never like not speaking. Like, what is that? Uh, I don't know what that is. We disagree on things. We don't like things that each other may say, or a position. I wouldn't even say what each other has say, because actually we're always very respectful of each other, but we may not agree with a position that a person has taken. One of them have taken, none of us, and so we just kind of leave it like that. Okay, that's what she said. I don't agree with it, and move on. But there's never a point when we're not speaking to each other out of anger, or anything like that. And I'm grateful because I understand that that's not normal in a lot of families. That is rare. But there's never been a time when we have not talked to each other. There's never been a time when we have not um, wanted to know how the other person is doing or what's going on in their life. There's never been a time when that's happened. And it takes work. So, and I think each person, and maybe y'all would, somebody type to me if you have people in your lives that you're actually closer to than your own siblings. If that's anybody out there, just type me, so I can see that. There are some people in your life that are closer to you than you are to your own siblings. If that is you, just say me. Just say me. And so, when you are connected to other people who may be close, you may be closer to than your very own siblings, it takes work. It takes work. Okay, yeah, I see you, Drew. I see you, Nayoka. Good night. It takes work to maintain these relationships when you all have become adults, and you have different things going on in your life at different times. You're not children anymore, all in the same place, where you didn't have a choice but to connect with each other. Now, as adults, you have to make that extra special effort to connect. Extra special effort to connect. Okay, so what is Tracy saying? Okay, she's still working on it, y'all. So y'all keep praying. Hopefully, she'll get connected very soon. So it takes a really special effort to be able to connect and maintain. That's the key word too, to maintain the relationship that you have, especially in situations where you've moved away and you're not living in the same area, the same town, or whatever it is with your siblings. It takes a special effort because everybody has a lot going on in their lives and they have their own families. But somehow we have been able, me and the multitude of my sisters, we've been able to maintain that kind of relationship that even if we don't talk every day, which we don't, whenever we talk, somebody always has something to say, sharing a joke, a good laugh, a de-stressor, especially on those days when things are really not going the way that you planned it or the way you wanted to. So I really was excited and still excited about having this conversation with my sister because we don't often get the opportunity to have these kind of frank and open discussions with our family members. And so I definitely don't take for granted the fact that she was willing and ready to come and to talk to us this week and to share some stories that I believe is going to be very encouraging for some of you out there. She is she's a widow now, but at one time she was a wife and a mother, and then she was a divorcee, and now her husband has predeceased her, or ex-husband. And so through those various phases of her life, so much has happened and so much has gone on that she wanted to share and to be able to really open up and to share some things. I'm really kind of they pushing me, so I hope she comes soon because there's just so much that was happening in her life and being able to be, like I said, me being an older sister for the ones that came after me and being able to see so much that was going on in their lives. Because, oh, I got to say this part for those who aren't aware. So I had these younger sisters, but we weren't raised together. And that's why I told you the relationship, it took work for us to connect because I was raised with my older siblings, um, with my father's side of the family. So there were five of us, my older sister, my three brothers, which are my mother's kids as well, because remember, my parents were married and they separated after my birth. So we were all raised together with my dad's side of the family. And then my mother raised all of these younger girls. And so we really had to make, and I believe me, had to make a really special effort to make a connection with them, had to make a special effort to make a connection because even siblings, it was not natural. It was not, and it was not natural because we were not raised in the same space the same way. But I think what connected us, and my mother, of course, played a pivotal role because she was the mother of all these children, and she wanted her children to have a relationship, and that we did. And so there are things that I can recall now. And that's why I'm telling you it's important that you talk to your family members. So for those of you who may be in, good night, Siobhan. Those of you who may be in disruptive or dysfunctional families right now, be the bigger person. Be the bigger person, no matter how long the rift has been or how short the rift has been. If it exists, be the bigger person and at least make the effort to connect because you are missing out. You're missing out on some valuable information and just a connection because even though you may have friends that are closer to you, there's still nothing like family, blood thicker than water. And whatever that thing is that connects you as family, that's important. The more you do that, the more you get some questions answered that perhaps were going on in your head, like, why do I act the way I do? If you're pondering, well, who do I look like? And why do I do these things or say these things, but you never really had any real connection? I'll share something funny with you. So, again, I wasn't raised with my mother and my sisters. And I remember one day I was adult, probably a young adult at that point, and I'm visiting with her and we're laying across the bed. And I noticed like I have narrow feet and my second toe is longer than, the big toe. It's longer. And so that's just the way it always was, and I didn't really notice anybody else around me. Like I didn't notice my brothers or anything, but I'm had the same situation. But I'm laying across the bed, and I look at my mother's foot, and I was like, "Oh, okay, it's you. You're the one responsible for giving me this long second toe." And she had narrow feet as well, and so immediately for me, that was like, "Oh, okay." That's a connection that I didn't even know existed or a characteristic. And I didn't even know that existed, but just the simple thing of lying across a bed with her and getting to see her feet for the first time, I mean, actually paying attention to it, I recognized that, okay, so that's why I am the way I am. And so don't miss those opportunities for those of you who may have rifts in your lives, or and you may not know. You may think like, oh, it's been so long. I don't even know how to break the ice. I don't even know where to start. How about just starting with a compliment? Starting with saying something nice. If you bake or you cook or something, bake them something, carry it to them if they're not too skeptical about eating it from you, because that's another level, of distrust or whatever. But how about just a nice text to them? Hey, just checking on you today. Wanted to know that you're okay. I love you despite whatever. Just how about that? Just trying to break the ice. You know, um, but it's worth it. It is worth making the effort to spend time with those family members, that the hard ones, because there are some people in your life that may be hard to love. It may be difficult to love, and it could stem from what they may have done to you. On the show we spend a lot of time talking about things that have happened in childhood. We spend a lot of time talking about what people have been through and how they've been able to process and what they're doing about it. So it may be a situation where somebody caused you some pain, some emotional pain, some physical harm, whatever it is. But even in the midst of that, you it's important. You may not ever want to have a relationship with them. And I got to tell you, I mean, that's okay too. But just be important that you release them. Just be important that you come to a place in yourself where, you know what, I forgive them. I'm going to keep my distance because I don't want to be around them, because I still don't feel safe around them, and that's okay. But just release them. Just don't walk around for the rest of your life holding that against them. That's all I'm saying. You don't have to be friends with that person. You don't have to be, chummy chummy or nothing. Um, because they've hurt you, but make sure that you're free, that your spirit is free, that your emotions are healed, that you're mentally in a good place where when you see them, you don't fold up and begin to get triggered and reminded of all the pain that they've inflicted on you. Just make sure that you take care of yourself in the process, and you don't have to connect with them unless you feel like that's something that you need to do as a part of your process of healing. But make sure, yeah, Monique says, right, just forgive and set boundaries. Absolutely. But you have to come to the place where you forgive. You'll never forget. You'll never forget what the person did to you, because they hurt you, they harmed you, and they may have stolen a part of your life that you will never ever regain again. But while you don't forget, that doesn't mean you shouldn't forgive. Because remember, the forgiveness is for you to be able to move on, and to do whatever it is that you need to do in your life to not only ensure that it never happens again to your children if you have kids, but to anybody else's kid for that fact. So you have to put in the work in order to make sure that that kind of thing happens. That's important. That's why we spend the time each week when all of us could be doing something else, talking about these issues, sharing different stories about how people have dealt with and how they're dealing with the pain. Because each person may have had some level of pain or trauma in their life. And I got to say this, if you don't remember nothing else, what I say, you've got to deal with it. You absolutely, whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old, you have to deal with the trauma, with the pain of your past, if you have it. Whatever it is, it may be neglect, it may not have been molestation or whatever. You may have felt neglected. You may have felt abandoned because of your parenting, or whatever the case is. But the fact is, you have to deal with it. You have to forgive for those who were not raised in two parent homes. Because guess what? I've heard stories of people. Because it ain't for don't even think for a moment. It's just obviously people raised in single parent homes. I've heard stories and know so many people because I hear so many stories every day who were raised in two parent homes and still felt abandoned and neglected. Still felt like they didn't have the support that they needed to get them through their childhood. A lot of people, two parent homes, married parents, Christian parents in some cases, and still coming out of that situation feeling abandoned and neglected, like nobody was there for them and nobody cared and nobody supported, all that kind of stuff. So even those of you who are married now, you have to be mindful of that. Listen, take the time, and if you want grandkids now, then hey, you have an opportunity for a do-over. But even though you may have adult kids, there are still some things as parents that you need to ask your kids forgiveness for. I'm just going to put that out there. As parents, there are some things that you may have to ask your kids forgiveness for because you didn't get it right. You didn't handle them right. You may have said some things or done some things, and you have to be honest enough with yourself and humble yourself to have these types of conversations at this point with your adult children. Yeah, I know it might feel weird, but that may be the very thing that that child needs, even as an adult, to move on in their life. That may be the very thing that they never could find the courage to talk to you about because you were the parent, but you can go to them and talk about it. And that may release them to become someone awesome and to fulfill their dreams and fill their purpose and become that image of God. So some of you parents may have to ask for forgiveness to think about and it may not have been anything that you intentionally did to the child. It just may have been a situation where you just didn't know better at the time, but now that you know better, it's an opportunity for you because especially if you got grandkids, especially if you have grandkids, because you got to understand that how you handled your children, more likely than not they will handle their children the same way or completely opposite. So they're either going to fall right in line with what you did and the way you handled certain things, or they're going to decide within themselves, you know what? I'm not going to do it the way my mother did it, my father do it. I'm going to do it completely different. And that's important too to note. And especially when it comes to the grandchildren and the your adult children may be parenting them in a certain way. There's just something about grandparents and their grandkids that they're always softer. They're always softer. They're always easier with the grandkids. It just happens. And you may be wanting to intervene, especially at a time of discipline or something like that with the grandchildren. But really, the child was just following your pattern, your adult child. So think about that for those of you out there, just throwing it out there. If you have adult children, there may be some things that you may need to apologize to them for. Okay, Monique says we did the best we knew how to because we didn't have the right answers. Absolutely. Absolutely. You did the best that you could. But yeah, if you see it like you have this opportunity, just imagine you as adult parents with adult children being able to sit down and tell your adult child, you know what, I got it wrong. When this and this happened, the stand that I took, what I said to you, got it wrong. And I just want to apologize to you. Excuse me. I want to apologize to you because I got it wrong. To hear a parent say they were wrong, could you imagine the explosion that would go on in that child's head, in their heart, that you humbled yourself to say, I got it wrong. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Because as adults, I don't know if any of you have ever heard your parents say that. I don't know. But for you to be able to give that gift, because that's what it would be, like a gift, a literal gift to your child, to be able to say that would be amazing. And then what you're doing in the same token is you're helping them to raise healthier children that don't have to recover from their childhood. Their children, your grandchildren, wouldn't have to recover from their childhood because they'll be raised in the types of environment where we could talk about things. And it may be a little different from how you were raised, or a whole lot different. But different isn't always better. But on the same token, it's not always wrong either. I was watching a video the other day on TikTok, and it was a video of this grandmother going walking to get. She has a favorite tree that she gets her switches from, and she was picking a switch for each. I think she picked like three, for it was three grandchildren, and she got a smaller switch for the child who was the youngest. And she got these switches to whip them for whatever it was that they were doing. And I couldn't help but watch that and was like, you know what, that is not cool. Like, I mean, that may be all you know how to do, but really, at the end of the day, that switch, those switches, and unfortunately, thank God, I never got whipped with switches and stuff that left bruises and marks on me. That's just not the way. Not that I didn't get beating, but that's just not the way that my family chose to discipline us with, hitting us with sticks and wires. And no, that's not the way they chose to do it. But some of you may have had that experience too, and just because you had it, that just does simply not mean that it's okay to do the same thing to your grandchildren. That's not okay. You bruising people and abusing them and leaving scars on them, and we always say we got beaten and it made us better people. That might be true too, because we were fearful that they could actually kill us. You know, and whatever. If fear is what drove you to become a better person, then hey, whatever it took. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what these kids need today. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what they need today, and that's totally a personal decision. Totally a personal decision, in your household, of course, but put more thought into it. Put more thought into, instead of just going and being enraged, because these children will drive you there. But don't let the first uh, your go to be a switch or the nearest thing that comes to your hand. Because if these children get seriously injured, you're in trouble. So don't let that be your go to. Even though they would enrage you and really push it down, try to figure out another way to deal with whatever the issue is at hand. Naoka said, you're right, because I did a lot of things wrong. Thank God for reconciliation, forgiveness. I got beaten with electric wire. My skin was torn and ripped, yeah. And Naoka, that story, no doubt, I always said I was beaten like Jesus. Beaten like Jesus. Yeah, listen. I've heard a lot of stories of people who would get whipped with anything. They said the nearest thing that came to their hand would get the parent's hand, or something would get thrown at them and all that stuff. And that was what they did. That's what they know how to. That's what they knew how to do. You know. But yeah, that's really brutal. That you're beaten till you're swollen or till your skin breaks and it's bruised and it's bleeding and all that stuff. But they didn't know how else to handle it at the time. But you know better, and you know what they say: when you know better, do better. When you know better, do better. You know that. When you really think about it, beating a child like that, not just the fact that it's abusive, but think about the child. If you beat them in such a way, or think about yourself if it happened to you, how are they supposed to function in school? How are they supposed to function all bruised and battered up and thinking about what just happened to them? How are they supposed to focus through all of that? As you said, child, I gave up that rage. I don't want to be like that. Yeah, yeah. But it's a difficult position to be in. But my thing is, you could unlearn that behavior. You can unlearn, and you wanted to retaliate. Yeah. You could unlearn that kind of behavior, even if that's what you suffered and what you experienced as a child. You could make a commitment to yourself, to your grandchildren at this point, or your children, that, you know what, I'm not going to be that way. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find alternative ways to handle whatever the situation. And guess what? I'm not saying no spanking or nothing like that. If you want to spank, fine. But I'm talking about to the extent where you literally bruising and battering and tearing up people's skin and they swollen and no, no. That ain't never been right. And when I saw friends and stuff who um, would share their stories of what happened to them and what their parents would do to them, and I thought about it and I was like, boy, that's cruel. That's mean. Um, and the type and no doubt there's a reason why I grew up in the type of household that I did, where I got beating, mind you, but like I tell you, I ain't never been battered and bruised, because I was always those type of children who was always asking why, the inquisitive ones, why. Had I grown up in a household that didn't entertain conversations and whatever, I probably wouldn't be alive right now to be sitting here having this conversation with you, because my mouth, no doubt, would have really, really gotten me in trouble. It really, really would have. And so you have to think about that. So I have no clue right now, honestly, what is she saying. She could only get on Facebook, but yeah, you have to be able to get on StreamYard in order to join the show, because the show is actually, by the way, each week when we do the live stream, it's actually live streaming simultaneously to YouTube, Twitter. I haven't. I just got back on Instagram today because I think I told you all at the beginning of this season that somebody had hacked my Facebook account. So for those of you who I may have been friends with, I had to start a whole new profile all over again. So I lost a lot of contacts. But so the person hacked it, and the Facebook was attached to Instagram. So I was off Facebook and Instagram for months. I couldn't open up a new account, or recover. So all those old shows that I would have done, if they didn't stream to YouTube, they're gone. I couldn't save them. Which reminds me, those of you out there, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and that's where you can go and watch all of the shows that I've archived, and tell somebody else, because I'm trying to grow that YouTube community as well. So yeah, that's the only way, Tracy. Unfortunately, you're going to be able to get on tonight. is to be able to go through the link that I sent for you. So we'll have to try it again. Obviously next week with my sister, because yet again that's the enemy trying to stop something so he could only delay, as we know, but he can't deny. Yeah, you just couldn't get on. I understand. Yeah. So, yeah, he only could delay. He can't deny whatever it is. I watched, but I couldn't connect. Yeah. I don't know why. I don't understand that either. But we'll try it again next week and see what happens. So, all I want to say is really and truly, those of you who are grandparents and who still have your children alive, whether they are young or adults, you still have an opportunity to reconnect, to reestablish, to strengthen relationships with them. You have an opportunity to do it, but the first thing you need to do for yourself is to confront you and to acknowledge the things that you may have done wrong. Good night, Elder. You have to acknowledge the things that you did wrong. And you know what? You need to be honest with those children. And those of you who haven't shared your stories, I talk about like your background stories, you still have an opportunity to do that with them if you haven't done it before, because they need to know that they're not the only ones that messed up. Like you wasn't always saved. If you are, you're not perfect, even if that's the image that you try to portray to them. You need to be honest with them if you haven't done it, and share your thoughts. Let them know who you were. You know what the power is in that? Because if they see and understand who you were and you share all those things, and then they get a witness of who you are now, they can only connect that but for the grace of God. And in that, God gets glory. And ultimately, that's why we live, so that God can get glory out of our lives. So if you haven't done it yet, and it may be challenging because you've been, and think about your parents and our parents not saying those things to us. It may be challenging for you to be honest with your children and tell them exactly who you were, what you did before salvation. Because a lot of people too, they had children after they may have gotten saved or whatever. So their children has no idea what their lives were like prior to their birth, and the parents never talk about it. And then their children go about doing life and just always thinking that she wants me to be perfect or he expect me to be perfect, this, that, and the next thing. And all they know is about you going to church and work, church and work, church and work, but they don't know nothing but the other side of what you were doing. So they feel like they always messing up, they screwing up, they can't get it together. And you don't give them and you don't extend to them that same grace and that same those brand new mercies that you get every day when you wake up. You need to practice extending them to your children. Practice that, because that's what God does to us every day. New grace, new mercies every day to us. So if you begin to open up and share with your children the kinds of, you'll have better relationships. You will have better relationships. And they're not saying that you give them a pass on what they've done or the mistakes that they made in their lives, but you will be better able to help them navigate their way out of situations that they may be in. And you'll have a deeper connection with them because you were honest. You'll have a deeper connection with them because you took the time to tell them about your life. And I know that, or I believe that for every parent, your desire is that your children have a better life than you did. Your grandchildren have a better life than you did. And you work hard um, to buy them things, to do things that will help to position them so that they don't have to experience the pain, the drought, the degradation, the lack, whatever it may be that you may have experienced, the abuse that you may have experienced in your life. You work hard to ensure that your children don't have to experience the same thing, but you need to tell them what happened. So you can't just ignore it and act like it doesn't exist. You can't just ignore it and act like it never existed. So you really just pop up now? So you want to talk a little bit? You want to talk a little bit? Just talking to my sister, y'all. She just pop up. Amazing. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. I don't even understand what happened, but y'all, this is my sister Patrice. Um, gosh. Okay. So we got a half hour. We're definitely gonna bring you back next week because
Mm.
whatever all of that was, in the name of
Next
Jesus,
week. Yes.
make sure. So yeah. My sister
Yes.
Patrice and I wanted to have this conversation with her because she posted something, as I said earlier, about earlier this week that really blessed me, and I had to call her and say, "Wow, you get it," because like I said, you're always talking, but you ain't sure people tuning into you and
Mhm.
listening to what you're saying. But Tracy, I want to start the story, and then we can next week we can build. I want to start the
Okay.
story. So
All right.
you guys, that um, I wasn't raised with my mother. My mother, Tracy, was raised with mom, of course. And let's start the story with at 18. Why
Okay.
you need to put them glasses back on. That ain't working out when you squinting like that. See, it's good when you
Okay.
can talk to your sister like that, right? Yeah, you're gonna have to do that because, honey,
Mm.
that ain't working. So, yeah, so born and raised in a strict household for sure. Always had to be in church and on point
Mhm.
and everything. But
Yes.
and I want you to let's pick up the story from at 18. I'm in college at this point. And I remember, I'm not sure if I got a phone call or when I got home, I heard, we call her Tracy, but she may be Evangelist Patrice, Pope Patrice, Minister Patrice, Dr. Patrice, whatever to you all, but we call her Tracy. And I get this information that Tracy is pregnant. I'm like, what? So take us back a little bit to that because this story is going to build you all to the whole point of why we really wanted to do the show tonight. So let's talk about that.
Yes. At the age of 18, I made the most terrible mistake of my life, and I got pregnant. Well, my mother, being the person that she was, mommy wasn't just religious. Mommy was very spiritual also. It wasn't just about religious because we had to pray. We had to sing all day and night when she was ready. We just had to do church. And so she expected us to live that what she gave us. And so me being pregnant wasn't good for her. And growing up in our household, despite being religious and spiritual, there was a spirit of pride. We even the way we carried ourselves,
Okay. Frozen. I don't know what happened again. Okay. So anyway, since she's here, we started the story. Let me until she gets back connected. What happened was this was literally her first time having sex, and so the first time she had sex, she got pregnant. That was the main thing. It was like, okay, this wasn't something she was practicing. She was already out of high school and all that stuff, and so literally the first time. But Tracy, you with me? You can hear me now?
I can't see you.
Okay, I can see you, but you frozen. Okay, so Here's what I want. And the glare really in your glasses, but my gosh, your eyes just shut right down.
Wow.
So, but what I want to say is, before we go on to that, I want to know
No.
that, okay, this is your first time having sex, you got pregnant. I want to know how you broke the news to her.
Talk to Vanna.
Like, how did you break the news? That's what I want to know.
It
Okay,
says everyone can see and hear you.
can you hear me, Tracy?
Fish, seasons.
Whoa. Okay, I'm gonna listen. If you can
When
hear
the
me,
White
I'm
House
going to
considers
take you out and try and come back in. I'm gonna take her out. So, like I was telling you guys, I was in college when she got pregnant. I was probably like a sophomore because I'm at least 2 years older than her. Um, so I wasn't there. Tracy, can you hear me? Okay, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, so I wasn't there when she broke the news to her, so I could only imagine what that was like. Cause like you said, like you heard her say, our mother was very religious and spiritual, um, at the same time, and expecting that at that point in her life, she wanted her girls to walk circumspect. And there was an expectation that they would just do right, live right. And, the whole going to church, every time the church door opens, having the home devotions, in the choir, in the girls' brigade, and whatever other auxiliaries that existed in church, they were a part of all of those things. That was the expectation. And I hope she comes back in. That was the expectation. So to be under that kind of rule and to come up saying you're pregnant, child, please, I could only imagine what that was like. But let me talk about my position, and I hope she gets back on. But again, we'll do it next week. So when I heard she was pregnant, of course I'm shocked. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, okay, she ain't the first teenager to have ever gotten pregnant, and she certainly won't be the last. That's what I'm thinking. She ain't the first. Yeah, disappointment. That's not what you wanted for her. She ain't the first. She won't be the last. So this me with my liberal thoughts. Remember now, we talking about this woman. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So I wanted to know, how did you break the news that you were pregnant?
Well, I broke the news in fear, first of all, being the mother that we had. But I also knew that I couldn't keep the news from her. And so it was bite the bullet one time. So I didn't even wait a week. I already knew within myself what had happened. And I already heard a voice from the Lord telling me what was going to happen. So within a week, I was at the doctor, and the doctor sent me home. He says, go home, come back in the next week. And I said, I can't wait the next week. You don't know my mother. So he says, no, you come back in a week and I'll confirm with you. And sure enough, when I went back in that week, I was pregnant. My mother didn't take that very well because to
But
her,
don't speed up. I want to know how you said it. Like, what were the conditions? What was
I
happening? Did
didn't,
she come home from the straw market because she used to be a vendor back then at that point, or I want to know. Like, take me back to that moment because I
it,
wasn't there.
yes. Okay, mommy had just come out of the hospital, you know her being a diabetic.
Okay.
So it was a couple of days out of the hospital. So during the time she was in the hospital, I had to deal with the fact that I could very well be pregnant. And so by the time she got out, And once the doctor told me what was what, I had to call Steve. And so he says, "What you gonna do?" I say, "What I'm going to do? You coming to this house?" Now, what happened was I left him after I had sexual intimacy with him because I knew that I couldn't live with that because that was not how I was brought up. So I decided to go back to my house.
Here we go again. Okay. I don't know what's happening, y'all. But here we go again. But I want to hear the story as much as y'all want to. So let's try this one more time before we wrap up tonight. We still got a couple of more minutes. So I'm gonna try this one more time, and hopefully we can get through this last segment before we wrap it up for tonight. But yeah, I'm curious to know how. Let me tell you this about my mother. To the naked eye, she was the mildest, um, warm person you wanted to know. Um, Compassionate and sensitive to the naked eye, but Monique, my cousin said, "Yes, I want to hear this story, girl. Me too." That's who she was to other people. But honey, when it came to her girls and the expectations of what she had for them, I could kind of liken it to like a dictator, you know, for lack of a better word. So that's why I'm so curious for me not being there, like how she broke that to her. But let me finish telling you my part since I don't know if she coming back. So I told you my position was okay, she ain't the first person, she won't be the last. And I had this conversation after I heard because my mother immediately jumped into you can get married mode. What's that? Oh, Monique said she was so sweet, loving, and no nonsense. Oh, absolutely. So my mom kicked into you have to get married. You pregnant because you can't be in my house and be pregnant. Now, this was back in the 80s, like late 80s. Yeah, late 80s. All right, she coming back. So Tracy, please stay on. Please tell me you can hear us. All right, so she's out of the hospital. She's coming home. Um, you had uh, sex um, with your your boyfriend who became your husband or whatever. But
Mhm.
so break it down to now you in the house, she home. How do you break the ice?
Well, I said to her, "I need to say something to you." So mommy was so keen and her instinct was just so always on point that having girls, she always was on her P's and Q's with us and knowing something going on. Because that was a woman who, at the end of every month, asked you if you use your bag of pads. Okay?
Okay.
And so before she asked me that question, I had to get to her because I would have not liked what was going to happen. And so we said, Mommy, we need to say something. Can you sit down? She said, "You don't tell me sit down in my own house." So right away, right away, Steve started sweating. I'm like, I'm not even saying anything anymore. So mommy said, "What do you want?" He says, "I want to say something." She said, "Well, say it." He said, "Tracy is pregnant." So mommy was just so cool. She looked. She said, "Oh, okay. So what's the plan?" He says, "We're gonna get engaged." Mommy said, "Engaged? You got to be crazy." Engaged? You don't engage my child after you're pregnant. Huh? That's your wife. So he says, "Pardon?" So she said, "That's your wife. That's your husband. That's your wife. Now go to the table and start making the wedding plans."
So let me pick up my side now. So I come in and I hear and like she's pregnant and she's getting married and I'm like she don't have to get married just because she's pregnant. I remember coming home. Remember now, I was in college when this happened, so I come home. Come into this conversation. I'm talking to my mother, and I'm telling her, well, just because she's pregnant, that doesn't mean she have to get married. Other people raise kids, and I was like, Tracy, you want to get married? I was like, you want to get married? Because I'm thinking she's
Uh,
18 years old. There's absolutely no way she should be getting married. She don't know nothing. She's never been out of this house. She's inexperienced. All these things going through my mind, and all I
yes,
remember is if you have somewhere for her to live, I remember getting told if you have somewhere for her to live, then she don't have to get married. Well,
but
I had
then
somewhere for her to live because I had to go back to college.
but Miranda, I think you had already finished college, because you said I'll
No,
take you to
no,
Freeport. You were
no,
still in college?
I was still in college, but if I said that, I'd meaning you gonna come and stay in Freeport. But
Yes,
I
because
was around now. I was still
you
in
said
school.
she could come to Freeport with me, and that angered her. And she said the only way she's leaving out this house is in a white dress.
Yeah, Monica, I was brave. I sure enough did. I was brave because I just honestly, I just always had an alternative mindset. That's what I can call it. I always thought differently, and I didn't think
Hmm.
pregnancy automatically should have meant marriage. But of course, her being old school, and
Hmm.
again, this is where when we talk about the wanting to save face and what other people could
Yes.
say and all that kind of stuff. Obviously,
Hmm.
that was a major role that played
Yeah.
in her head, obviously, and I'm sure for you too, Tracy.
For me, the save face wasn't really for me, because I thought I was a person who always looked beyond things. And I saw that I didn't want to marry him. I looked at family traits and I saw that that's not what I want in my life, that I could do a good job raising him by myself if mommy would have allowed me to.
Hmm.
So for me, when then she said, I'm not coming out of my choir for you. I'm not stepping down from anything in church for you. So I said, but I'm of age, and I almost got knocked out
I'm sure
when
you
I
did.
said I was of age. Because that was the one thing in my mind I always said, if I mess up, I need to be of age because this woman will kill me. But I used that line and that didn't work well with her. Because she
Hmm.
didn't care if you were of age. You were spoiling her image. And you were
Absolutely.
not allowed to do that
And you were in her house.
in her house. And so it
In
didn't
her
matter
house.
what my pastor said, it didn't matter what my father said. She told both of them to their face, this is my house. I rule this house. And I say she's getting married. And so my father had nothing to do with my wedding because my stepfather and my mother had their wedding. And
Yeah,
I
and
always said,
she proceeded to plan this wedding and then had me as the
maid
maid
of
of
honor.
honor. Like me, the one who was already against the wedding.
Hmm.
She had me, so I'm hearing I'm the maid of honor. I'm like,
Yes.
what? No.
Mhm.
So what
Yeah.
happened, Tracy, to the wedding? No, who was there and who wasn't?
Well, you told her, you said, I'm not coming back to wear any dress. She said, well, I'll get someone else to wear it. Brenda wore the dress.
And she sure did. Our cousin Brenda Bonnie ended up wearing the dress because I was defiant and I was so serious, y'all. I mean, like to my
Hmm.
heart.
Yes.
I'm not going to be. See, I was principled to the extent that I will not participate in something that I don't believe in. And I was young. So if Tracy was 18,
Hmm.
that means I was 22, maybe
Yeah.
22. Yeah. So I was principled. I'm like, I ain't doing this. I'm not coming.
Mhm.
So, child, the dress get ready. Thank God my cousin obviously was the same size as me or whatever to get tucked in. But I wasn't doing it. And
Oh,
so I
yeah.
refused to be a part of that because how we I know more than I did now. It was just a matter of I just thought it was so unfair. That's all
Mhm.
I was thinking.
I
I was
thought so too.
I just thought it was just so unfair for
Mhm.
marriage to be imposed upon. I mean, like Tracy, did you participate in the planning at all?
Well, we were told we were getting married and we were not going to tell anybody that we were being forced into a marriage. That was the first thing. And so we had to pretend that we were planning a wedding. So I was allowed to pick the girls' dresses and take them to the dressmakers so that they would not suspect that I was being forced into a marriage. The
Mhm.
rest she did. And I don't know what happened. She went away. She bought the wedding dress. She bought everything. And then she said, "Oh, here's your dress." So I
I
always
was
said that was her.
I think I met her in Florida. I met her down there, but I wasn't gonna do that. I was not going to participate, and I didn't show up,
Mhm.
y'all. Yeah,
No,
I did not
no,
show up.
because the morning of the wedding, she looked for you. And I was saying to myself, I wish she don't come. And Brenda walked in and she said, "Come here, Brenda. Come put on this dress."
I
I
really did not want to be in
I
that.
did not even have a makeup artist. Mommy called Mali and she said, "Throw some makeup on her face because she going to get married."
That's our cousin, y'all. By the way, that's another cousin of ours. So you see her laughing with this sense of humor now as we reflect
Yes.
on this.
Hmm.
At the time, it really wasn't funny for me.
No, it
It
wasn't.
wasn't
It
funny
wasn't.
because I already knew that. Can I say it was doomed not to work?
Exactly.
And guess what? Nothing having not knowing much about her husband at the time or expecting husband, but I just know that when you force people into something, if the
Never worked.
foundation is not right, you
Hmm.
cannot. It's not going
Hmm.
to stand firm. Let me get this comment. Okay, Elder Inslee says that happened to me when I got pregnant when I was 15. The
Oh,
church people put my mother out of the choir and put her in the back of the church because she had a pregnant young child in the house. Okay, okay. Um, So yeah, I mean, obviously that's what she fared. I don't know if they would have put her out, but she obviously had. And even if that's not what the people did, just because of the kind of pride and stuff that she was
yeah,
functioning in,
yeah.
she wasn't having it, y'all. She was
No.
not having it. So Tracy, in other words, had a shotgun wedding,
Yeah.
shotgun wedding,
Hmm.
and got married. Tracy, what was it like waking up the next day? No, I gone too far. Standing up taking those vows at that altar under those particular circumstances in all seriousness, what were you thinking?
Well, there's so much happened even before that. But when I got to that day,
Hmm.
um, as I was marching up, and everybody, the church was so packed with people. I'm like, where these people come from? Why are they here? And everything was just so in order. And people were saying, "Smile, smile, girl. You look so beautiful. Smile." And I was just ready to cry. And Dorcas was in my face with a camera, was like, "Smile, Tracy." And I'm like, if these people don't get on my face, I'm about ready to commit suicide. So I walked up to that altar and I didn't hear a word Pastor Smith said because I was just like, "God, if you could just come out the skies right now, why do you have to punish me like this?" Because
Wow.
I'm thinking this is a punishment for me. And because my pastor said, "Okay, then, since you want to marry her, don't take her to your church. Let me marry her. She's my member, so I can watch over her and take care of her in this marriage." Because he knew it wasn't going to work. We were not even allowed to do counseling with him because she came to the counseling.
Wait a minute. She did what?
She came to the counseling and she sat between us too. And let me tell you, when Pastor Smith says, "Patrice, do you love Stephen?" And I said, she shook me so hard in my side with her elbow. I said, "Yes, sir."
Wow,
See,
Tracy.
you could not destroy her image. You had to agree, and the people had to see that you were agreeing with her. So while it was a force into, she needed me to show the part also that I was a willing participant. And that's where all the hurt started. because everything was inside me being internalized. Like, are you really going to punish me like this after what you went through at 15? I
Hmm.
don't believe this.
So let
And
me ask you this question. Lonnie says, how soon after you told her, how soon did the wedding take place? After you told her you were pregnant and when y'all actually got married? How many months?
well, we March, 6 months, July,
Within
August,
6 months, you were
six,
saying, I
six,
do.
six. Actually, we had to wait. Steve wasn't even the right age because Pastor Smith said, "You do know that he cannot get married at age 20." His parents would have to sign for him, and that would have been a no-no because they didn't even know we were getting married. So we had to wait for his birthday to pass
Hmm.
for us to get married because he was 20 and I was 18. And so we
Right.
had to wait until he turned 21 so that he could sign for himself. So that was like within the same day of me saying I was pregnant, a wedding was planned. It was only a matter of waiting for age. Otherwise, we would have gotten married the next day.
Right. Sure. If she had a way. So you're at the altar now. So y'all went to one counseling session and she was there or more than one?
Just one, she allowed one. She said they can come to one,
Okay.
and that's it.
So look, I'm in a daze, y'all, because trust and believe. We yeah. So Tracy, standing at the altar, seriously, and you're thinking, why is this happening to me? And it's like, so you thought you were like having like an out of body experience or something? Like what were you
I
feeling emotionally?
First, my anger never really left me because when I got pregnant, so I was angry with Steve because he looked like he was having so much fun, and so I'm,
Tracy.
I'm looking at him and saying, "This dude ain't serious." And Pastor Smith is talking, and I can only see mouth moving, and then he's saying, "I do," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I do what though?" Because I really don't want to be married. And I'm like, God, if this is your way of punishing me, I learned my lesson. Anytime now, you could tell me it's a joke.
Hmm.
But that never happened. And so we had to go through the whole ritual, and the anger set in me. And then I began to get bitter. I just got bitter. I didn't like Steve, and I didn't like my mother for that moment, for a while, because I
Because
just
you
felt
felt
that she should not
pressure
have done that to me. Exactly.
pressured into this relationship. Okay,
Hmm.
it's 9:27. I usually stop at 9:30, but so this is the last question for this segment. Then we're gonna pick it up next week. So you get married and you're angry. So that's another thing. How is the relationship gonna work if you're angry at this person that you're marrying and you're angry with your mother, you're unsatisfied, you're unhappy, but yet you knew that because you said I do, you had to make it work.
Hmm.
Woke up the next day. Like, first of all, did y'all go on a honeymoon? Did y'all go anywhere?
No, no, she said the honeymoon was over.
What you mean it's over? How could
When
she
you got
say
when
that?
you got pregnant, the honeymoon was over.
Oh, okay. So that
Yeah,
so the dating or whatever that was the honeymoon.
yeah, that was the no. The pregnancy was the honeymoon. but
So
but
you didn't. Yeah. So what was that like? Just like when
well,
did the reality of what you had done or the weight of what was happening, when did that really set in?
Miranda, that set in from the reception. From the reception, when I went to the reception and I looked at all of those people expecting me to act like a happy bride, I couldn't believe it. And then I looked for my mother, and she wasn't there. And so I said, "Where is she?" And they said, "Oh, her being a diabetic and where she probably was doing so much, she passed out. So we had to take her home." And I said, maybe that was God's way of punishing her.
Oh
And
my God.
so
No, you didn't, Tracy.
I sure did. I told you I was angry.
Right.
So when we left the reception, Even if you see the photos of when we were cutting the cake and I was giving him the cake to eat, somebody literally asked me if I was trying to jerk him in his mouth with the fork. Because he just looked like he was having fun. And I'm like, you cannot be having fun at my expense.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Wow.
so I said, when we left the reception, I said, I want to take her dress back. And we went to the house and I took off the dress and I said, oh, I left your dress in the room. And I left. And we went to the house what mommy had furnished out and made sure everything was in there that we needed. I didn't do anything. She did everything. And she said, this is where, this is how you're going to live. She gave me my bedroom set and everything she put in there and said, and you know what was so ironic? Mommy moved in next door to us.
Okay. So you know what? On that note, we're not going to go any further with the story right now, but we are going to pick up next week to talk about the story because trust me, Tracy has a really amazing sense of humor now, but it wasn't nothing funny about
No.
what she experienced at that time because again, I didn't show up because I wasn't having any part of it because I knew it was just so wrong
Mhm.
to force somebody into doing that or somebody who felt helpless even though she was a 18 years old. She was a young adult. She had nowhere else to go. She really didn't have anywhere else to go at that time. So sis, thanks, we soldiered it out and got in a little bit
Mhm.
tonight, so we're gonna pick it up next week, guys. Thank you for hanging with all night. We'll do the hear the story because you have to hear what she endured, how she overcome or overcame rather, and what she's doing now, and just the amazing turn of when you submit your life to God, He's able to give you beauty for ashes. He's just
Mhm.
able to do give you beauty for ashes. So there's so much more to come. And thank you guys for hanging with me. I'll see you again next week for another edition of Swerve with me. This is just the what this is this the prequel.
The
So
prequel.
this is the prequel, right? So see you again next week. Good night,
Yes.
everybody.
Good night.